Hey everyone, I'm Steven Sigmund,
And I'm Mike Pacinio.
and this is the weekly movie Throwdown, a discussion show where each week we dig into a film that fits our overall monthly theme. This month, that theme is gridiron stories. We're talking football. And this week, we are talking The Replacements from 2000, directed by Howard Deutch. Not quite as intense as some of the other football films we have talked about or will talk about this month. So a nice little respite from the intensity of the game. So, Mike, you called an audible this week because we did have a far more intense film to watch. Let them know what happened.
Nice use of football term there. I was also going to use audible in changing movies. So good job there. So
Thanks.
started with Black Sunday, movie neither of us had seen, but we picked it. We thought it would be a nice change of pace, interesting movie, football related. But we found out, and we sat with it with our crack team of our podcast, and we tried to weigh how much of a football movie it actually is. And what we discovered is that it just didn't quite reach. It was a football adjacent movie, not really a football movie. It's actually more of a action movie, more of a thriller movie, and kind of a terrorist attack movie, which is not really not really football related, what we want to do. However, it's worth mentioning, and this was cool about it, and why we considered it, is that this is probably the only movie that actually filmed at a Super Bowl. So that movie filmed at Super Bowl 10. The NFL, I think because it wasn't as big as it is now, actually allowed a filmmaking crew to film inside the Super Bowl, which is fascinating. And they also got the okay to use the Goodyear blimp, the actual Goodyear blimp, which does show how crazy the 70s were, where you could like get the okay from Goodyear and the NFL to film a movie on the blimp in the Super Bowl and do all that. So for that reason alone, I think it's worth watching the last 30 minutes, which is fascinating. I can't think of any other movie where you get to see actual Super Bowl football footage in a movie. But the rest of it, yeah, just the first 2 hours, because it's like a 2 hour and 30-minute movie. There's really no football in that movie. So we decided, that just would be doing a disservice to football month. So audible at the last minute, and we switched to the tried and true replacements. We replaced our movie with the replacements. It all works out.
It's almost like you're watching the same movie. I mean, tonally, these things could not be more similar. Yeah, what a 180, really. I mean,
that is true.
It's really shocking how different they are. But I do still recommend people go watch Black Sunday. I mean, it's a little topical right now too, and that's kind of part of it as well. But yeah, maybe not right for what we're doing. If there were a way where like Jason Statham could have been on the blimp thwarting the attack, it's almost like Air Force One in a way, where the Goodyear blimp is hijacked. So if there were a Statham element to it or something, it would have been maybe reconsidered for the show.
I could definitely see a remake of Black Sunday with Jason Statham. That would be a highly watchable movie.
By the way, speaking of Statham, just confirmed this week, Jeremy Irons to return in Beekeeper 2. So you're really going to get that thespian action one more time.
That's one of the best things about Beekeeper, the high and low of it absolutely. All. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So there's a little precursor to the news for you. Let's dive in and talk about a few news stories that came across the desk this week.
Sure. I mean, the big one to me is that there's already going to be a sequel to Superman. Not a sequel, a follow-up. A not a direct sequel according to James Gunn. But yeah, they're already working on another Superman movie, which is due to come out in July of 2027, which is really fast. I think what's his name who's making the Batman must be really jealous about how quickly they can turn a Superman movie around. But I'm actually wondering if the sequel to Superman will beat it to the theater. We'll see. But yeah, we have another Superman movie, and as someone who really liked this movie that came out this year, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Looking forward to another one that I think will go a little deeper in character now that we've established the parameters and the stakes and everything. They can go a little bit deeper into storyline. So I'm excited to see what he does.
I am too. I mean, have you watched The Peacekeeper?
Been watching The Peacekeeper? Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very different.
Haven't jumped in.
Really different. Because my kids keep asking me, like, can we watch Peacekeeper? I'm like, not really, especially not after the orgy in the first episode of this season. No, I think we're good.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I haven't dug into it yet, but that's the thing I keep seeing online is that there's an orgy. That,
Yeah, it's a lot. It's not.
it's long.
It's James Gunn. It's definitely what it says it is. So yeah.
It's interesting how different the tones are for being in the same universe and really wanting people to kind of watch it all.
Yeah, and,
Not
and
for
that is
kids,
something
but
that's interesting because there are parts of Peacekeeper that directly tie in to the universe now. But yeah, people that are watching Superman definitely, some of them anyway, can't be watching Peacemaker. So that's we'll see how they can split that and kind of make sure everybody is aware of all the things that are going on, even though the audience is not going to be the same for both.
well, speaking of Superman, it was one of the few films that actually did okay at what was an abysmal box office this summer. There's an article in the New York Times about how this was supposed to be the summer that we bounced back from the COVID lull, that we beat out the writer's strike, everything kind of came back together, and just wasn't the case. So this was the lowest box office for the summer since 1981.
Wow.
Adjusted for inflation, 1.6 billion is what was earned during the summer months this year. And in the Times article, they talk about how a big problem for the studios is marketing now, because where do you put your money? Just with media being so like spread out, what do you lean into to get people to know your movie's coming out? I mean, it seems to me that it's just a matter of people knowing and not caring about a lot of these films, not really wanting to go to the movie theater, and maybe a little less about where you run the advertising, because you'll find the audience.
I think you're right, but I mean, we've talked about it in the pod a couple of times, and we talked about it last week, where there's a movie coming out that we don't even know is coming out. And even, I mean, in this case, it's a Netflix thing again, but it's like Catherine Bigelow has a new movie coming out. It's like, well, that just kind of bubbled up to the surface, but I mean, it's coming out in a month. I just feel like the acknowledgement that a movie's coming out to the point that it gets released now is much smaller than it used to be. And so, yeah, I do think there's an issue in terms of getting word out for smaller movies and a lot of the non-blockbusters, I think.
Well, yeah, for the smaller movies for sure, but the blockbusters are the things that are kind of tanking right now. I mean, Fantastic Four had a more modest budget, and it did better than its predecessors in that franchise, but still didn't do great. The Jurassic World movie did far less business than Jurassic Park or Jurassic World or Fallen Kingdom. So it's, I think these studios have to lean into the IP and the franchises, but they're having diminishing returns.
Right. Isn't that it's like they're saying it's a marketing problem. Are we sure it's not a diminishing returns issue? Like, how many Jurassic movies do we need at this point? Yeah. So I didn't even dislike the new one, which I actually went to go see, but I certainly didn't think it was necessary. Like, I don't at any point feel like I need to be seeing this. And Fantastic Four was fine, but again, it wasn't anything earth shattering. So yeah, I think that you're going to the well so many times now. All the marketing in the world is not going to change the fact that this stuff is familiar and not everybody wants to keep going back to the well over and over.
I think they're at kind of a crossroads and they don't know which way to go. Yeah. Do they lean into the known properties and keep trying to rebuild those, or do they go in a different direction? I mean, this is kind of what happened with New Hollywood in the late 60s. The studios were throwing all the money they had at like sword and sandal movies or musicals. Like the bigger, the better. The audiences weren't there for it. And then they went a whole different direction. We're seeing it with things like Weapons and Sinners. And I really hope One Battle After Another has a similar life at the theater. I don't know if it will, but I think people are more interested in that. And as these franchise numbers keep dropping, hopefully the studios will realize that and go a different direction. I mean, Warner Brothers did say that they're going to start putting a little more money into smaller films starting next year. So hopefully, that'll pay off. And it feels like desperation at this point. And it's just bad for the movie theaters. Like, they're the real losers in this. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. One more thing I had to mention: we lost Graham Greene this week, who is just like the quintessential character actor when it comes to playing an Indigenous character. He is in everything. Nominated for an Oscar for his role in Dances with Wolves as Kicking Bird. He's been in The Green Mile. We talked about him on the show in Wind River a few months back. And just like the guy you go to, I think he had something like 180 credits on IMDb in like a 25, well, maybe like a 40-year span. And just somebody you recognize, he's that guy. And we lost him at 73. And it's going to be interesting to see like who fills that role for him. I mean, sadly, there aren't a lot of Indigenous characters or a lot of Indigenous representation in film. I mean, I think there's more and more of it coming now, but for a long time, he was the guy. So
Yeah.
I hope as they tell more Indigenous stories, that we'll see somebody step into that role and take his place. But
So I do have one last thing. Well, first, speaking of Wind River, I think we were off by a few months because Wind River just is apparently streaming up the charts, like jumping up in Netflix. People are watching on Netflix in droves. I was just reading about this. And there's even like articles about it in Entertainment Weekly, like talking about Wind River, like it's popped all of a sudden. So
it's that Lizzie Olsen heat.
People want to go back and look at our Wind River episode. We were a couple of months ahead of the curve. But the other story that jumped out to me that I wanted to mention, because this is all the stuff we're obsessed about, and it's a bit of a mixed feelings kind of thing. So it's this AI company called Showrunner, which is actually backed by Amazon. And they just announced that they are going to try to use AI to recreate the lost 43 minutes of The Magnificent Ambersons, which was the Orson Welles movie that came out in 1942. It's well known amongst movie obsessives that the studio took his movie, which was like 2.5 hours, and cut it down to like 90 minutes, which is one of the great heartbreaks of his career. Something he never really got over. And people have always talked about what the movie would have been like if that footage would been there, and what the true movie would have been like. So this AI company is talking about going back and trying to recreate the 43 minutes using AI. Now, the footage is gone. Back then when you cut footage out of a movie, you threw it away. It was gone forever. It was never recovered. I think the original script still exists, and so that may be what they're trying to do. But other than some notes, like they don't have any real direction of what Wells wanted it to look like, but they're going to try and do this. Now, the Orson Welles estate is actually suing them for doing this because they do not think that this, they basically said you can't capture the work of an artist, what he would have truly wanted. But I think this is very much something worth keeping an eye on, because this company is pretty big, backed by Amazon. And this is a big swing. And look, for people like us who love movies, we've always obsessed about, the Magnificent Ambersons, what that missing footage would have been. But I don't necessarily want to see AI dive in and do it. So it's just, it is a story that jumped out at me. But a step further than that, the CEO of this company, his name is Edward Sachi. He's on record as talking about wanting to be the Netflix of AI, but also this idea of, this is the beginning of this, of AI taking over, and saying, I want to find the exact quote because it's worth seeing. He says that this company's technology could mark potentially the end of human creativity, predicting a world where we enjoy entertainment created by AI. And of course, my question to that is, why? Like, did anyone ask for that? Why would we want to destroy human creativity? I'm not really sure what we're getting out of that. And that's actually what the Orson Welles estate is saying. We don't want, a computer taking over for what human creativity is. You can't capture what Orson Welles' creativity was. So I just think there's a lot going on in this story, and this is the first really big swing from an AI company to do something like this. So worth keeping an eye on.
I think Orson Welles is an interesting case for this
Yeah.
because he was such a passionate and unique filmmaker with a very distinct visual style. So it'll be interesting to see, like an hour and 45 minutes of Orson Welles with like a computer generated bit in the middle, just how far that's going to be from what Welles did around it. I mean, that would almost be a great example of why AI shouldn't be used because I would imagine it's going to be glaring.
Well,
and
a side note to
quite
this.
disappointing.
Yeah, side note to this too, that it's not that the Orson Welles estate is 100% against AI, by the way, because apparently they have okayed using AI to recreate Orson Welles' voice for like some voiceover stuff. Which I don't know what to say about that, but that is actually something that they seem to be okay with. But I think, touching his actual work is a bridge too far, even for them.
I might be on board for Orson Welles as like an AI assistant. That would be kind of cool to hear him telling you like where to turn on your car.
That wouldn't bother me either.
Hopefully they'll source for the AI voice those wine commercials that he did where he was totally sloshed, and you'll get drunk with Orson Welles. This is very disappointing. And this week, Reese Witherspoon came out in favor of AI. I don't know if you saw that. She says it's important for women to get involved in it because it's here and it's not going anywhere. I kind of disagree. I do think it is going somewhere because it's flopping as it is. A lot of companies that use it, including Taco Bell, which had AI like drive-thrus,
it's really
completely tanked.
But at the same time, she's not wrong. That it's true. It's like if there's something here, and as we talked about before, all these companies are so male-dominated. I mean, she's not wrong in that regard. So I do get where she's coming from in that sense. But yeah, it's doesn't necessarily mean we need to make it the wave of the future.
I think the AI bubble is going to burst. I mean, all these tech companies are investing in it and all of these corporations are investing in it, and it's not working the way they think it's going to work, and it's never going to. And I don't like it in a sense of like generative AI. I think if it's going to help your workflow do something like easy, maybe it's worth looking into if it's just like an assistant. But if it's like creating something, that's bad news, and it can't do it well, and it's never going to do it well. Is Orson Welles going to have like 12 fingers in this movie? Like, it's just never.
We're not a technology podcast. We're not an AI podcast. But again, I always just keep coming back. I read all this stuff and just keep asking the question of why. It's like we're acting as if we want AI to take over creative endeavors, and it's just like, why? Like what is the point of that? I don't even understand. Like, you're right, as an assistant level, look, we can accept that you can help you maybe do things more efficiently, do things a little faster. But what is the end goal if you're taking away the actual creative work that people do? I don't understand what the end game of that is, or why we think that's a good thing.
Well, I think the end game is for wealthy people who can buy AI programming to get the skills that laborers would give them without paying laborers. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. Yeah. But again, I don't understand what happens to all these people. Like, you take everyone's job, and I don't quite understand what the end game of that is. The Matrix, I don't know exactly what we're heading for. So,
well, mentioning The Matrix starring Keanu Reeves is an excellent point to segue into our film for the week.
Inadvertent segue,
so
nailed it.
Let's go ahead and talk about, from the year 2000, directed by Howard Deutch, The Replacements. Okay, so it's football month, and this is an interesting one because it's a lot like the other films, and it's also very different. It's set during an NFL strike, and the owners enlist basically scabs across the picket line and play the season so they don't have to pay the regular players who are asking for apparently a lot of money, which in today, $5 million doesn't seem like a lot of money. And so it really also has like that ragtag group coming together, bringing all of their differences into a place where they can align and win the game. We'll talk about that final game and the value of it, just like last week with the program. But I know you want to talk about what this is based on. So what's kind of the history of it?
got a lot. Surprisingly, I have a lot to say about this movie, but I do love like the ragtag bunch. I mean, you always get us with a good ragtag. This movie is a bit of spot the cliche as you go along in it, but
Oh yeah.
so the real story, they took this from. It goes back to '87. Just give everybody a little quick history lesson on the history of the strike. So in '87, the players' union strikes in the NFL. They had actually gone on strike 5 years previously in '82, and the owners were basically trying to prepare to make sure that they wouldn't get caught flat-footed again if it happened again, because they knew it might be coming down the line. So in '87, the guy who ran the Dallas Cowboys, his name was Tex Schramm, came up with this idea to bring in replacement players. And the point of using replacement players was to keep football going and to force the hand of the union. Because in '82, everything went dark. So the idea is if you can keep football going, keep it on TV, people coming to the games, there is not zero revenue to the teams, which would kind of squeeze the union and force them to have to make a decision of how much they would want to go without. Now, just to clarify your point where you said they were asking for more money, and that's part of my biggest issue with this movie, The Replacements, is that they do such a cartoon job of creating the pro players as the villains and the replacement players as the good guys. I mean, of course, even Howard Deutch in the director's commentary mentions that he ended up being a little disappointed in how black and white he made things. And that's one of the frustrations. It just feels like it always makes me laugh where we count the players as villains, but does that mean the owners are heroes? So we're siding with the owners. That's really what the decision is. Someone's getting the money, right? Someone is getting the money. So if the players aren't getting the money, the owners are getting the money. So our feeling is that the owners should have all the money and the players shouldn't. But that's not even why they went on strike. One of the main reasons they went on strike was because there was no free agency in football at all. I mean, in baseball, there's free agency since the '60s, the famous Kurt Flood thing, but football never had it. And technically, they didn't get it until the '90s, and they had to go to court to get that. But the owners did not want free agency. And I want to, here's something else that I have that I want to pull up, because it's a quote from that same guy, Tex Schramm. And this is what he told the head of the union, Gene Upshaw, at the time. He said, "You guys are cattle and we are the ranchers, and we can always get more cattle." So that is a pretty good idea of telling you where they thought the players stood. But what the players really were fighting for at the time as well was a lot of post-playing stuff, like access to healthcare after they retired, a better pension plan. Because look, football players' careers are pretty short, and you get hurt, and that's that, and they owe you nothing. So they were kind of fighting for things in the back end. So we'll just say it's a very complicated story. And I wouldn't necessarily paint the players as just greedy, rich, spoiled brats, which is very much how The Replacements paints them. And I think it does a disservice to the bigger picture. I'll get into more down the road about what really frustrates me about this movie. But that out of the gate, I know it's easy in a movie to make, you want to make villains, you want to make good guys and bad guys, and that's the easiest thing to do. But it's just a lot more complicated than that. And even casting Jack Warner as the owner, who is like the most likable guy in my opinion, one of the most likable actors in all of Hollywood, even that stacks the deck where you actually find yourself liking Jack Warden, even though he's technically the bad guy, right?
Yeah, this is his last role.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but he went out after that storied career with The Replacements.
Wow. I think I love every scene that Jack Warden and Gene Hackman have together. And I can just imagine them sitting around laughing that they're getting to make money making this movie at the end of their careers. But watching the two of them hang out together, I would pay a movie ticket just to see it 90 minutes of Jack Warden and Gene Hackman talking to each other. I love every second of the two of them on screen together.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with Hackman's costume, like his attire in this. He looked great with the straw hat and the old school jacket.
I love his laugh throughout this movie. He's great Gene Hackman laugh throughout the whole movie. Everything about it's wonderful.
He really kind of, I mean, we'll talk about the cast and things like that down the road, but we've had him on the show a couple times with Get Shorty and this, and he's really very funny, which is not how I remember him.
Well, good point in mentioning that, because that's another thing that Deutsch says. So I was listening to the director's commentary for this, and he says that Gene Hackman really doesn't get enough credit for how funny he is. And some of the scenes in this movie were actually kind of ad-libbed or steered by Gene Hackman, who has a very good sense of comedy, and they just kind of let him do what he was doing. So yeah, I think it's a very underrated part of his career. Even in the Birdcage, I mean, he was wonderful in the Birdcage. So just another example of Hackman's underrated comedy talents.
Yeah, I can't think of a comedy that he did like in the 80s or prior to that. Maybe he just sort of leaned into comedy toward the end. I mean, his last film, God, we're talking about all these guys in their last
Welcome
films.
to Mooseport,
Welcome
right?
to Mooseport.
No, God, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, maybe that's like the miss out of all of the hits, but yeah, I really appreciated seeing him in a comedic role. I want to talk about this in relation to the program, which we've already done. And it's, like all sports films, it's so easy to make it a cliche. And they certainly do that here. And there's almost like a 1-for-1 with characters. Like I see Favreau as Alvin Mack.
Yeah, they're the tropes of characters. I think the key thing of this is, you're right, there are all the cliches, but the point is, can you make the characters, can you draw the characters well enough that you're okay with the cliches because you like the people? And in this particular case, I think they don't do a great job of drawing the characters exactly. I don't think this is a very strong script, but I think the actors that they cast in these parts are what make the movie. I think it's a subpar movie with an excellent cast of actors who elevate fairly mediocre material and make it very watchable. That's what I think in this case. And I think that everyone that's in this movie is giving their all, and they're all very, very likable. And that helps a great deal in elevating a so-so movie.
I mean, it's a good hang.
Right.
Like you hang out with these guys and it's just a lot of fun. I think it's kind of had a resurgence. Like this was going to be our rewatch and reconsider film for this month, because it's something that, like, the more you watch it, the better it gets. And it seems like that's kind of the consensus, because as we'll get into the numbers later on, it didn't do very well. And for many years, it wasn't really something that people watched, but then it kind of got a run on TNT and started being on streaming. And, that's like the TNT bump, and people are like forced to watch it. And then they start to rethink about it. And that's what happened with this.
Back in the days when everyone had cable, the
like
TNT bump is non-existent now because the cable is basically gone. So you can't stumble across something at midnight on basic cable like you used to.
Yeah. Maybe TikTok is like the new TNT. I don't know.
I can't speak to that at all.
I don't know where it is.
I'm going to defer to you on that one.
Well, I don't have any expertise on it either. I mean, we're old men. But yeah, I mean, this really aligns with the program, but it also aligns with Major League, almost like 1-for-1.
Yep.
I mean, Orlando Jones's character, Willie Mays Hayes, has this, and actually everybody in this kind of has a talent, but they also have some big liability that doesn't allow them to like lean into that talent. Whether it's Favreau's character being just rage filled, but he can't really contain it. The Orlando Jones character, super fast, can't catch a ball.
So hang on. So I have to interrupt here because we didn't do Necessary Roughness, but I talked about watching it a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
The parallels to Necessary Roughness in this movie are really something. Even said the super fast guy who was played by, the same guy who played Alvin Mack in the program. He was the guy in Necessary Roughness who was super fast but couldn't catch. It's like 1-to-1 in this. It's like the exact same character. But even more than that, there's a scene in this movie where Orlando Jones is there. They're eating dinner together, and he's holding a football. And we're like, well, why is he holding football? Well, it turns out that there was a cut scene in which the coach tells him that because he can't hold on to the ball, that he needs to carry the ball with him everywhere he goes, which is exactly what happened in the program. And it's maybe that's why they cut it, because they were like, Jesus, this is exactly the same. But yeah, the exact same thing.
Well,
same.
I mean, they'd probably cut like 50% of the movie if
that was too far even for them. I guess they were like, wow, that's exactly the same, so we're cutting it. But yeah,
that's really interesting. I mean, are there only so many sports like characters.
I don't know. And in Necessary Roughness, there's a character who's like a karate guy who is trying to learn how to play football. And then of course there's a scene where they let him loose and he just unleashes karate moves on a bunch of guys in the football game. And that definitely kind of relates to the Bateman character in a certain thing where they, just let him loose. There's all these things that kind of play exactly the same. Even Necessary Roughness is like, washed up quarterback looking for a second chance. The parallels between these two movies are very coach looking for a second chance also in that movie. So it was pretty funny to me. Even, the program is its own little thing and there are definitely tropes that this takes from as well. But yeah, Necessary Roughness was the movie that it really seems to mirror in a lot of ways.
I'm looking forward to talking about Any Given Sunday because it seems to me that well, the tone is very different and it's Oliver Stone directing it. And I'm looking forward to seeing if those parallels are there, if they still have those characters. I mean, I think that'll answer the question, like, are there only a limited amount of characters you can put in a sports film? But it'll be interesting to see Stone's take on them because that's kind of what you have to do is if you're trying to elevate it, like the program did, I think,
right.
you want to give those characters a little more range, a little more depth. Whereas something like this, I mean, you just lean into the cliche. It feels like a very easy script to do. Like, there's a file cabinet somewhere that has each character trait and you just grab it and throw it in there. Right. I mean, they're not reinventing the wheel. They're making Major League.
I think this seems like a good segue to talk about when we were going to talk about Howard Deutch as a director. And I think this is as good a place as any because I definitely agree with you. And that's kind of how I see him as coming into this. And this is no shade to Howard Deutch. In a way, he's obviously a very competent director. And he's actually did a lot of work in TV over the past decade or so. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Because you're right. I think that Howard Deutsch's job isn't necessarily to reinvent the wheel or to be a visionary. He got his start making music videos and advertising and trailers and things like that. Did some music videos, segues. His first movie was Pretty in Pink, which was the first of like 3 movies he directed that were written by John Hughes. Like he became like John Hughes's backup director for the movies that Hughes didn't have time to direct. And they have a very close relationship. So
yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I always assumed John Hughes directed these movies.
Right. So Pretty in Pink, Some Kind of Wonderful, which is actually where he met his wife, interestingly enough, Leah Thompson, and then The Great Outdoors. So his first 3 movies were all movies written by John Hughes that Hughes didn't have time to direct. And so he gets, the nod from John Hughes, who is as good as anybody in the 80s. But Hughes's kind of second tier movies, right? And then he ends up directing Grumpier Old Men, which is the sequel to Grumpy Old Men with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. And then he directs The Odd Couple 2, which is a 25 year later sequel from the original Odd Couple in the 70s that Neil Simon had made. And so it just feels to me like Howard Deutch is, and listening to his director's commentary as well, that's the sense you get from him, that he's good at what he does. He is a technically sound director, knows all the blocking, understands what he needs to do, but he's not bringing magic, so to speak. Like, that's not really his job. His job is to bring out what's on the page, do the job to the best of his ability, get from point A to point B, get a job made, and do it well and competently. And that ends up being why you see like he's second tier John Hughes movies, the sequels to 2 classic movies, and then he gets into TV and does a lot of work in television. And because I think television is more about getting the work done competently and efficiently, and that seems to be what he's good at. But at the same time, working twice with Matthau and Lemmon shows he's a very likable guy, a very easy director to work for, because those guys are legends at that point, and they end up working with him twice. So I think that speaks a lot to his likability as well as a director. So again, not really to shade him, but there are certain directors that are meant to be certain things, and I think that he slots down the middle. And so a movie like The Replacement, where it's like, look, we're going to make a cliche movie, and we want a director who is not going to what's the word I'm looking for? A director who is not going to piss on the material or look down on it. but take the script and get it done and try to do it as best as you can with a bunch of actors who are good actors and get them to do the script to the best that you can do it. And that's kind of what he does. I think he makes the best movie that you can make based on the material that he has. So I think that's fair, right?
I mean, he's almost like a studio director from the 30s.
Yeah, good.
Like just kind of a guy for hire, does the job, does it well. Not Orson Welles, to call back to him. You know, he's maybe not a visionary, but does a great job. And I mean, I think the fact that, you know, maybe helped by TNT, but the fact that this kind of is like having a bit of a resurgence and people are rethinking the quality of it speaks to that.
Yeah, there's good character
scenes.
There's good character work, you know, amongst the actors in the movie. There's a lot of good dialogue scenes. The football action is filmed really well. I think that is I mean, the hits are really hard, and it's just funny. You watch this movie and you think, you know, that it can't be that hard. Like, I mean, you know, the hits can't be as hard as they look like in this movie. And I disagree. I think this is a good job of representing, if you're on the field, how hard some of those hits actually are. So I don't think that's, you know, made up for the movies at all. I think this is a good job kind of representing the on the field feeling. There's a good scene where Shane Falco calls an audible, I think in the very first game that they play. And it does a good job of kind of creating the confusion that would come from calling an audible when no one knows what the hell they're doing. But you get like those quick cuts and you just get the sense that you are in the middle of something that you don't understand what's happening. And so those little things, again, it's the job of a competent, efficient director. I think that he does a good job of telling the story. But is it necessarily a great story? Not.
I think he's also a director who has a lot of heavy hitters. What to kind of go back to that with no pun intended.
Cliches abound
with people. Yeah, like you know, like Hackman and Keanu, and really just kind of gets out of their way, because they, you know, for whatever this film is, I mean, I think they carry it well. And even Keanu, who I question, I mean, I might as well talk about him a little bit here. Like, I love Keanu Reeves. I think he's excellent. Is he always in the movie he should be in? Maybe not, but I think, you know, this is coming off The Matrix for him, and this is where he went. And while that's like a perfect fit for him, this is maybe a little less so, but it's still like kind of in his wheelhouse. I mean, maybe more so than like Sweet November, which he would go on to do a few years later. But I think he really carries the film well. I mean, he's a good quarterback for the film, the way he is for the team.
Yeah, well,
and you know, a big part of it is like they need to have heart, and I think he has a lot of heart as a person, and that's what you see on film. So I think he is able to inhabit the role pretty well, even though, you know, the line deliveries or whatever, the acting part of it. But I think he needs to act a little less. So in order to like nail the role. I'm kind of counteracting myself by saying like he's good in it, but he's bad at it. Like maybe the technical aspects of it aren't as great as they could be, but I think he's perfect for Shane Falco because he's somebody who cares, has a lot of heart, and that kind of comes through.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I feel a little better about him in the part than you do. Maybe I think he does a good job of capturing just kind of the downtrodden way that he carries himself. You know, slump shoulders a little bit, just kind of someone who's kind of hiding all the time until he kind of starts to find himself. And I think Keanu's very good at that because that's just kind of the way he carries himself. He's the unassuming guy. So I think that part helps. The other thing that has to be mentioned is Keanu Reeves, the athlete. I just think that Keanu Reeves is a very underrated actor-athlete. So he's been in a hockey movie, he was in a baseball movie, he was in a football movie. But by all accounts, he's an excellent athlete. He was known as the Wall when he was in high school. He was a hockey goalie, and they used to call him the Wall because he was really, really good. And he still plays hockey recreationally to this day. So hockey was his main sport. But he became efficient enough at being a quarterback that he actually did those final scenes in the movie, which, like we talked about with the program, in this case, they also filmed it at halftime of an exhibition game. And so they had, 13 minutes to get these shots done. And rather than using the body double quarterback like they did in the program, Keanu actually did this. He ran this offense, and they trusted him enough to do it because he, in a matter of months, he became a very efficient quarterback. And you can see the throws that he makes and his motion. He looks very believable as a quarterback. So, it speaks to his work ethic that he dives in and really goes after stuff, but also that he has a natural athletic ability that kind of shows through in a lot of what he does.
He did have a little practice as Johnny Utah in Point Break 10 years earlier.
That is true.
So he has great quarterback names: Johnny Utah, Shane Falco. Yeah. Really, really. So I don't know if we count Hardball as a baseball film for Keanu,
that's fair. That's
fair. If we do, he and Omar Epps are in the running for that sports EGOT. Yep. So he only needs, he's been, what was the hockey movie he was in?
He had a small part, I think, in Youngbloods, that hockey movie back in the 80s.
Right. With Swayze.
Yeah, with Swayze. He was in that. He had a small part in that movie.
Whoa, so Point Break is a reunion for him and Patrick Swayze?
I believe so.
I did not know that.
Now, wait.
Wow.
Now I really have to double check, because I was reading an article about him, and they mentioned Youngbloods. Young Blood is what it's called, not Young Bloods. And I'm pretty sure that Keanu had a small part.
So he only needs a basketball. I don't think it's going to happen at this point, because he's even reluctant to come back as John Wick at this point, because it's taken such a toll on his knees.
Yes. So Keanu Reeves was definitely in Youngblood with Patrick Swayze and Rob Lowe. Yep.
Look at that. Wow. I love knowing that. I can't believe I didn't know it already. Mm-hmm. That's pretty great. Keanu does his job here. Hackman too. I mean, let's go down the cast. Hackman, we kind of talked about him already, but just amazing as Jimmy McGinty. He's so good in this, and
we know that he's good at being a coach, right? I mean, that we've already established that he is.
That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, how do you follow up Hoosiers as a coach? But he does it well. I mean, he had that practice too, right, just like Keanu did with
and part of what attracted him to this is that he really does like movies about underdogs, which is why he did Hoosiers and why he did this. Like he's a fan of those kinds of stories, so he wanted to be involved. And if you can get Gene Hackman in your movie, that's good for you. So
it's kind of a weird time in his career. I mean, he's in The Mexican after this. I don't even remember him in that, but I remember liking that movie. Then he goes on to Heartbreakers, where he's kind of like a little bit of a horn dog.
I actually liked Heartbreakers. Heartbreakers is to me, it's a kind of underrated movie. It's like a remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels in a way. Although they remade Dirty Rotten Scoundrels as Hustle with Anne Hathaway years later, but it's got like a Dirty Rotten Scoundrels feel to it. Sigourney Weaver was good, and Jennifer Love Hewitt was good in that movie. I think that's a bit of a sleeper.
But yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks to the comedy that he's doing at the end. I mean, after there are a few things in there that aren't comedy, but the Royal Tenenbaums and Welcome to Mooseport, that kind of rounds it out for him. And really starting with Get Shorty, I think. Like he gets into that comedy, and there's also Loose Cannons from 1990, which
God, I forgot that movie.
With Dan Aykroyd, I assume is comedy. I don't really remember.
Its category is comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but of course, Superman. I mean, that's like pure comedy when he's playing Lex Luthor. So I guess he's doing it the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what a career for that guy. He's incredible. And I want to talk about Jon Favreau too, because you see him in this film, and I got the thought that he has to be the most successful Disney product ever.
Yeah.
Because he goes from this to where he is now. I mean, he came into Hollywood with Swingers, wrote and starred in it, then followed it up with Made, really kind of on the scene as a writer and doing bit parts as an actor, but not anything worthwhile or to speak of. And then just becomes the Disney guy, producing, directing, and it has his hand in everything. Marvel, Star Wars. It's really quite a
Yeah, well, think about
trajectory.
this, that he was in another football movie. He was in Rudy, where he played Rudy's good
Yeah.
friend. And if you would have thought that the guy from Rudy would end up being the guy who plays Patrick Bateman in this movie, that alone is pretty impressive.
Patrick Bateman.
Yeah. So
I think it's Danny
Bateman, Patrick Bateman.
Although he does have a Patrick Bateman
different
mentality.
But yeah, so but
he's there to murder the defense.
That would be
So
funny.
I think
Patrick Bateman is a football player. That would be a pretty funny movie. But yeah, so yeah, that alone is a huge leap for him. I mean, drops a ton of weight, gets in shape for this movie. What I'm interested in is that I wonder if when he went to cast Elf, that he enjoyed working with Faison Love so much that that's why he cast him in Elf. So he had a little, they end up working together in that. So I found,
and then they go on to do Couples Retreat.
That's right. So yeah, I wonder if they have a good relationship in real life, if they're friends. Who knows? But yeah, I was thinking
they
about
must. That. And Faison Love is, I mean, he was, I know him as Big Worm from Friday, right. But he went on to really get in that group of like Vince Vaughn and Favreau, and he was in Blue Crush.
Yeah.
Which I loved. I always playing kind of a football player.
Yeah, right.
For the
he was a
part,
bit broad in this movie. I thought he played this one a little bit broad.
Well,
of course, they all
this
do.
This movie's a bit broad.
Yeah, everyone was a bit much in this movie. But yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he's kind of stereotyped a bit, I think, in the big linebacker guy. That's what he is in everything, even if he's not playing a linebacker. But I love him. I love when he pops up. I think he's hilarious. And I think he just has such a unique look for a character actor that you don't think about, like, it's kind of crazy to see him getting so much work, but he's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of one note, but he's there for that guy, and he always pulls it off.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This is a cast full of guys that may be one notish, but are really good at what they do. So we talk about Orlando Jones, who at the time, was probably one of the bigger cast members that weren't Keanu Reeves. But Orlando Jones is interesting to me because I remember seeing him. He was in the original cast of Mad TV, which was kind of a show that was created to try to compete with SNL, a sketch comedy show. And out of the gate, he was kind of immediately the person that stood out in that show. Just effortlessly funny. And, went on to do quite a bit of work. I think unfortunately his career tapered off a bit, and I think he probably should have been a little bit bigger than he was. He was in Sleepy Hollow. He was really good in that show. But this movie is a good example of the good and bad of Orlando Jones in a way, where there are some scenes where it's a bit much, like as in like with everybody.
Yeah.
But there are certain scenes that he ad-libs that are effortlessly funny. I think he's just a naturally funny guy. All of his line readings are interesting to me because I just think he is naturally funny. And I mean, even the I Will Survive thing is kind of from him. Like he kind of choreographed that himself and kind of got the team to do that, because all those guys did not want to do that dance scene. And he had a lot to do with kind of coaxing them out and getting them to do it. So again, just, I think he brings a lot to it. And I've always really liked him as an actor. I wish he was still doing more, but yeah, he had in the 2000s, he did quite a bit of stuff. And this is one of the things he did when he was on the rise.
By the way, we mentioned Faison Love played Big Worm in Friday. Orlando Jones played Worm in my favorite movie, Magnolia, but he was cut out of it.
Right.
So I would have, there's some cut scenes where you see him, but yeah, I mean, maybe that would have like sent him into the stratosphere working with Paul Thomas Anderson, but got left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, it's
sadly.
I don't think about Orlando Jones a lot, but every time I see him, I do wonder why he didn't end up being bigger than he was. But even now, he pops up in a lot of things. He was in a few episodes of Abbott Elementary, so it's not like he's not working. But he was even in an episode of that Lakers show on HBO that I remember. So he pops up on that. So yeah, he's not starving for work. But every time I see him, I think
if we made T-shirts for this show, I don't think about Orlando Jones a lot would be a really good one. I would wear that.
Yeah, maybe.
I have to shout out Brooke Langton, who plays Annabelle in this. I loved her on Melrose Place. I was a very big fan of hers, and I remember seeing her in this and thinking, "Oh, this is great! I get to see her again." Also in Swingers, she played Nikki, which I forgot. The woman who Favreau calls 1,000,000 times, and then tells him never to call again.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that, but she's great in this.
Yeah.
I mean, as great as she can be, like everybody else. She's a bit, she's crying for the entire final game for some reason, which I didn't understand, but yeah, I mean, serviceable. That sums this movie up.
Yeah.
Serviceable.
What I didn't know about her is that she actually got her start in sketch comedy too, that she was like a member of Second City. So she has a background in sketch comedy, which you wouldn't know from the work that she's done since then. But even in this, she's she has a spark. There's just something in her that's very engaging in this movie, in what could be a pretty thankless role. And let's pause for a second then to talk about the cheerleaders as strippers kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is to me is a perfect example of this movie, of like what this movie represents. We have no knowledge of whether or not the cheerleaders also went on strike with the players back in '87. I have no knowledge of that. But in this, of course, that's how they make it, so they have to get new cheerleaders. And then, of course, they find two women working a strip club, bringing all the strippers, and that ends up becoming a through line throughout the movie. And yeah, it's just an example of the cheapest, kind of easiest thing. The cheerleaders as strippers. But I will say, I have to mention this, that it did lead to a part that I do think is kind of funny, because the scene where they play San Diego and the strippers distract the team. I think it's fine, but I love the reaction of the coach from San Diego, and the guy who plays that, his name is Mark Ellis. He's in some bit acting parts, but he's actually a sports coordinator. So he was the guy who did a lot of the football stuff for this movie, and he's one of the guys that helped coach Keanu Reeves to get better at football. But he's like the second unit director who does the sports stuff. Was his main job. He did that for quite a few movies. But there's a couple of scenes in that part that he ad-libs that are just very funny. I just love how angry he is in his reaction, and I think a lot of that wasn't in the script. So I just have to shout out that is one of the few scenes that does make me laugh, and I just like that guy, like the way he reacts so angrily to everything that goes on.
So Mark Ellis, I'm just looking up his IMDb, and he's very interesting because it seems like he's going in as a consultant or like an assistant director, and they always put him in the film. So he was a relief pitcher in The Rookie, the Dennis Quaid film, which we talked about on the show. We'll see him next week as the quarterback coach in Any Given Sunday, or 2 weeks from now. He was a coach. He's always the coach. He was a coach in Hardball, the Keanu movie. And he was a stretcher guy in The Longest Yard. So
it goes all the way back to
even
that.
in The Shaggy Dog, he was a football coach. No, the Sandler remake in 2006. Okay. So what an interesting little niche he's created for himself, where he must come on and consult. And he was a referee in Varsity Blues in 1999. Yeah, I mean,
I love it. So, I think he played in college, and he just found a niche where he's the guy who helps football look real in movies, but finds his way to worm in his way into all the movies and get a part of them. And he makes the most of a lot of them. Like in this movie, I think he's very memorable. Yeah. Like I every time I see that scene, it makes me laugh. I think he's just a memorable character.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, because I thought he was a real coach. He seemed like he would be a football coach. So I wanted to see if you knew who he was for that. But yeah, that's Mark Ellis, man. That guy is he shows up in everything. That's pretty amazing. Wow, that's really cool. So we'll talk about him again in a couple of weeks. Yeah, I look forward to that.
So the other guy, you have other two guys worth mentioning. The reason I mentioned David Denman, who plays the deaf tight end. And I think he's worth mentioning because this is a very early movie for him. But he's actually in Peacemaker right now. So that's why I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, yeah, he plays the brother in Peacemaker now. But
I had no idea he was in this.
Yeah, he worked really hard to learn all the sign and stuff, so much so that the director said a lot of people thought he was actually deaf because he was so good He worked really hard to kind of not fake any of the signage. Like that stuff was all real, and he worked very hard to come off as someone who actually was hearing impaired.
I just rewatched Rebel Ridge a couple weeks ago, and he's great in that. But everybody knows him as Roy from The Office, where he's that really established him. But he works quite a bit and shows up in a lot of good things. So I'm it's cool to see that he was in this. And he's so young.
Yeah, so that's a very early part for him. And so the other guy, I guess, to mention is Brett Cullen, who plays the villain, who plays the bad guy quarterback. And again, a decent actor doing a good job with a pretty thankless role. It's such a one note bad guy kind of role. There's no nuance to it, but he does a pretty decent job of being a jerk. Second movie of his for us, because he's also in Ghost Rider. Right. So
that's right, Barton Blaze. He is someone I like to see. He's worked with Chris Nolan. He was in The Dark Knight Rises. He was in Joker. He always shows up, and he's always kind of a dick in a way. I mean, even when he's like he plays, Thomas Wayne in Joker, and he's still kind of smarmy. And I think that like paired with this script is like a great combination, because the Eddie Martell character is just almost cartoonish, like you said, in how terrible he is. I mean, they all are. And would they all hang out at the stadium like that all the time?
I think the idea is they're probably picketing outside, which is something that the real players did, so we have to assume. But yeah, it is pretty silly how cartoonish the bad guy he is in this movie. But there is one scene that I think is a good example where, show don't tell of what a jerk he is. Because there's a scene when he comes in at the end in the last game and plays quarterback, and the whole thing falls apart. But there's that one sequence where he's angry at the tight end because he can't understand him, whatever, makes him run a route. Yeah. And I think they call them, I forget what they call them, a suicide route or whatever it is, where a quarterback leads a receiver into getting just completely demolished. And that's what bad quarterbacks do. They put balls in a place where the receiver is going to catch it and get drilled. And that one sequence where he does that to the tight end and then goes over to him and says, nice hands, when he gets drilled and drops the ball. And I kind of love that scene because it's a really good, like, it doesn't require any exposition. He has to speak. But if you know football, you realize that he completely screwed him there. And it was like deliberately trying to hurt him almost. And I think that's a nice little shorthand for just what a dick he really is.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of examples prior to
That's fair. But to put you, one of the things like the absolute no-no in football is you don't put your players in a position to get hurt. Like that is kind of like the unwritten rule, like something that you do not do.
I didn't understand why he crossed the picket line. I mean, he was like the leader of the strike, according to like news reports that we saw and just the conversations in the film. And yet he crosses the line. Like, that feels like it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, they don't do a good job of explaining that. At some point, when you're ready, I'll go a little deep on the '87 strike, and we'll talk about some things. So I'll give you an example, maybe of how that goes down. But but yeah, in this movie, it's not. They don't do a very good job of explaining it.
Yeah. And, I think it's interesting though, because it shows just, he has no respect for these players. And I think throwing Ryan Murphy into that suicide route or whatever it is like a great example of like, I'm here for me. I mean, he's just the antithesis of Shane Falco. And that's kind of the point. Right. And, I don't know if we're going to see this in any given Sunday, but one of the tropes is, I just watched The Longest Yard, the Sandler one a few weeks ago, and it has this as well. The star, the quarterback who leads the team, steps out for a while and then comes back in the last quarter to save the day. Like he kind of leaves the team out there to get their asses kicked. And that happens here, of course. Like that's one of the many, many tropes. And, I just think it's interesting that like you see Martell out there just for himself.
Yeah, necessary roughness does it twice. The quarterback steps away and then the coach steps away. So they do it both. They do a double. So it's got it all. It's got every cliche you can imagine is in that movie.
The only cliche I didn't see in this is rain football.
You're right.
which surprised me. I thought for sure there would be rain football, but I
They
guess
had
they needed
sprinklers
more
at one
time for
point,
the
but
dance
no rain.
scenes. Yeah, I mean, Shane comes back in slow motion through the misters, so there's like mist on him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of water, I guess. But yeah, man, I don't even know. Like a couple things that I I just think are absurd. I would love to just talk about absurd things in
Go
this.
for it.
I mean, right at the beginning where he's underwater for like 5 minutes with no scuba tank, like running plays
Right.
with a football trophy that he finds in the middle of like a bay
That has his name on
with
it,
his name on it.
which means
Yeah.
he threw it in the bay. Amazing.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's just, it starts you off as like super absurd and just a lot of nonsense. But what about well, I know we're going to talk about the soundtrack because you wanted to get into that, but the Jock Jam song is in there. I forget what it's called, but that's like one of the things that, is in every movie, every sports comedy that's in. It's not like I'm sure Any Given Sunday doesn't have it in it.
It's the Gary Glitter song. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah,
I don't know. But I really appreciated Hackman and Favreau yelling at each other, like, "Get me that ball!"
So that's a good point. So we're talking about how Hackman kind of, brought some of his own ad lib stuff into this. That was all Gene Hackman. So in the script, it just says the coach tells him to give him the ball. What Hackman tells Favreau is he says, if you want to do this with me, he's like, just repeat everything that I say to you. And that was the direction. And he's like, do you want to do that? And Favreau was like, definitely. And that's how that scene came about. It was just a one-line thing in the script that Hackman decided to kind of improvise something else for that is a very memorable scene in the movie. Yeah.
That's so fun. Because you don't see Hackman do that very often.
Nope.
And just playing off Favreau is just really great. Another cliche in this that we see in all of them is Favreau's character Bateman and Wilkinson are really like two guys from opposite sides of the tracks. One's a policeman, one's a criminal, just like Omar Epps' character and the Ray character in the program, and then they work together in the end.
That's right.
Yeah, like kind of love it. I mean, the cliches.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there are so many. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah. So what I want to mention is I always remember enjoying this movie, and I still kind of enjoy it. But after going deep on this one, it ends up being a movie that I end up liking, but I end up walking away more disappointed than not, because once I learned more about the strike itself, it ends up really, really disappointing to me. I think this is a really good example of, Hollywood just kind of blowing it and deciding to go for the cheap and easy way, when there's an actual story in here that ends up being so much better than the story they end up putting in this movie. And I don't really know why. So as it said to you, back in 87, there was that strike and everything that went down with that. But this is loosely based on the actual Washington Redskins team from 87. So it's the Washington's team here. And, but it is loosely based on the Redskins from them. So I went and I watched a documentary and I read some stuff about this particular team in 87. And I don't know why they didn't. This would have been a perfect movie for Disney to make like a rookie / Invincible type of movie about. Because the true story of the 87 Redskins is fascinating, and I think a story well worth telling. So the bottom line was, just to give you a quick thing, explained Tex Schramm, the guy from Dallas, who was kind of the architect of the bringing in replacement players. But their goal was also just to break the union. Like they tried to do everything they could. They did like some financial stuff. They put some incentives and contracts to kind of, with kickers that kind of forced players to cross the line when they didn't even want to, because they stood to lose like millions and millions of dollars if they didn't cross. So that's why some players crossed. It's just a lot of underhanded stuff. So the Redskins, the reason the Redskins team was fascinating is because they were general manager Bobby Beathard, coach Joe Gibbs at the time, and they were a very good team back in the 80s. One of the things that Gibbs told the team before they went on strike is he said that you guys will go on strike together and cross together. He said no individual player should cross the line. He said you guys have to leave as a team and come back as a team. because he was very concerned that guys breaking the line would cause disunity in the future. That, you know, players would resent the guys that crossed, and there would be a whole thing about it. And so he was very adamant to the team. He's like, no matter what, he's like, you guys need to stay unified. And this is the coach, by the way, but he's like, if you're going to leave, just stay away. He's like, don't do it. And they bring in a bunch of these replacement guys that Bobby Beathard finds and build a team, a real team. And some of these guys have really interesting stories, some of which they used in this movie. The idea of bringing in an ex-con, that's a real story. It wasn't a defensive guy. It was a quarterback that was in jail on a drug charge, and they bring him in. And after the replacement thing ends, he goes back to jail for like 4.5 years. That story is actually real.
And then he makes the longest yard while he's in jail.
Exactly. The stories of the quarterback that comes over is kind of real. Like, good college quarterback who kind of loses his shot, kind of doing nothing, and they bring him in. But there's a lot of parallels of some of the stories of these guys that are true. But a lot of the other coaches, like the Giants and the Eagles, wanted nothing to do with replacement players, like treated them like they were nothing because they didn't agree with bringing in replacement players. It was very controversial. But Gibbs decided to treat this as a real team. Brings them in, respects them, treats them well, teaches them how to play as a team. They gel, and they win all of their replacement games, the Redskins. The reason that matters is that by winning those games, they end up with home field advantage in the playoffs, and they win the Super Bowl that year. And then the kicker, though, is that 13 guys from the replacement team actually stay on the team. And there's a lot of stuff that goes with that too, like people not accepting them. And so there's that story, which I think is a fascinating story to tell. But then the real worst part is that they win the Super Bowl, and the replacement scab guys don't get rings. The guys that stayed on the team get rings, but all the other guys, they never got Super Bowl rings. And even the pro players think that the scabs deserved a Super Bowl ring because they do know that them winning those games mattered. But here's the real part. The last game at the end of the movie against Dallas, where a bunch of Dallas players cross the picket line, so they're playing like the real Dallas Cowboys, that is real. That actually happened. When the Redskins scabs played the Dallas Cowboys in the last replacement game, like 26 or 21 Dallas Cowboys had crossed the line, including some of their very best players. So the scabs were playing the real Dallas Cowboys. But what comes to pass is that because Dallas has so much disunity because of who crossed the line and all those resentments, they end up losing to the scab Redskins, which and kind of starts a downward spiral for Dallas, which ends up costing the GM and the coach their jobs. Tom Landry gets fired within a year. And that's when Jimmy Johnson comes in the 90s and changes the whole culture of the Cowboys. But it kind of started there. Like it was like the beginning of the end of the old school Cowboys regime because they were so adamant about breaking the union and doing such like underhanded garbage stuff. So long story short of saying, the actual story of the 87 Redskins and the stories about the strike itself, I think are inspirational, fascinating. There's a documentary called The Year of the Scab, which was made for ESPN 30 for 30, which I highly recommend everyone go watch because that's one of the things that I saw that really told this tale. It's a much, much more engaging and interesting movie than The Replacements. And I don't understand why they didn't do something more like that than go for the cheap and easy comedy of The Replacements when this story had a much more inspirational and frankly better story to tell.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that makes such a great story.
Yeah, tons of
I could see it being made today. I mean, that with so many union disputes coming up, it would be really fascinating.
And you could tell the story from like Coach Gibbs's perspective in a way, because it's like, a guy who tried to keep his actual team together while they were on the strike, but also respected the people that came in to try to teach them how to be real football players. It's like, I think that's a really fascinating story as well, because a lot of other coaches weren't doing that. So yeah, I think you could remake this movie, or not remake it, but make a movie from the perspective of the head coach trying to make this work. And I think you get something really interesting.
Let's get to writing.
Yeah, one other thing we didn't mention was that this, I think, is the only movie that Pat Summerall and John Madden are in together.
They're great.
Yeah, John Madden is in like Little Giants that came out a few years before. But, Summerall and Madden, long-standing football broadcasting team since like 1979. But I think this is the only movie that they're both in together where they're calling football. And so, for that reason, I kind of love it. Like, I think it's great to see them on screen together in a movie.
Yeah. I love that they, the telestrator play where Madden is like illustrating it as like the worst play ever. Like just a complete mishap. But yeah, they're the kind of the Stadler and Waldorf of
right. And some of it's ad-lib, like Madden does a little bit ad-libbing in this movie, but he also came in and gave them some pointers on some football stuff because when he got there were some things he didn't like. And so he gave them some pointers on how to improve certain things because, Madden is Madden. So I think that's a cool little footnote in this. I think it's the only movie that they were in together calling games.
I just kept thinking how Nicolas Cage is playing John Madden as I watched this.
That movie is going to be something. We will see.
Yeah, I can't wait. But you mentioned, well, we'll get into the numbers, but I know you wanted to talk about the music a little bit first.
Yeah, we're going
to do every week.
We're going to try a new segment in the show. We're going to call it the Music Minute, and we're just going to take a minute and discuss some of the music in the movie, because this one is definitely worth talking about. Opens with a song called Ziploc by the band Lit, which I'm sure no one remembers, but I love. I have Lit's first two albums, and I kind of love Lit. I don't know why. It's like, just one of my favorite 2000s bands. So I was very happy to hear that song leading off the movie. So that's first. But another thing is they spent a lot of money in the budget just to get 3 Rolling Stones songs, because Howard Deutch is a huge Rolling Stones fan and thinks that Voodoo Lounge is a super underrated Rolling Stones record. So he got 3 songs from Voodoo Lounge and used them in this movie, which was not cheap, by the way, but did it anyway because he really loved the Rolling Stones.
They're probably cheaper than other Rolling Stones songs.
It might be. But what I really want to talk about was in the pivotal romance scene, they use Every Breath You Take by the Police. And I'm going to soapbox for just 10 seconds because this drives me insane. Deutsch even mentioned that this was his choice, that it's one of his favorite romantic songs. And that's what I really got annoyed because I'm like, it is not a romantic song. Everybody put it as their wedding song. It's a movie about stalking and surveillance. Sting has said this. He doesn't even understand why everybody thinks it's a romantic song. It is not. It's a song about stalking somebody. And yet everybody thinks it's a song about romance, and I will never understand it. It's like the Born in the USA of romance songs.
I was going to say.
No one gets what it actually is. I don't know why everybody keeps using it as like the scene for romance things. It drives me crazy. Stop using that song to indicate love. It's not a good look. It annoys me every single time. That's so I just had to say that.
But then they balance it out and maybe show that story from the other perspective by playing several times I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. So that's sort of like the victim perspective in that. And it's a nice balance.
It's a nice balance. Speaking of I Will Survive, I don't particularly love that scene. I don't love sequences where, people dance and whatnot, unless it's a musical. That seems a little too long, honestly. They could have definitely trimmed it a little bit. But it is pivotal.
And you must hate Footloose.
Oh, we also forgot the cliche of the bar fight, which brings unity to the team.
Oh, yeah.
That's another big cliche.
Yeah.
But the jail scenes, it's important, but they could have cut it a little bit. I don't need that. But I'm sorry. I love I Will Survive. I always have. It's like one of my favorite disco songs of all time. So I'm going to cop to it now. So every time I hear it, I enjoy it. And I don't care who knows. It's fine.
All right. Well, you seem to not like this the more you watch it, and I seem to.
I think the more I know about the story, the less I liked it. But at the same time, if it was on TNT, I'll watch it. It's a watchable movie. Like I said, I think it's a watchable but disappointing movie.
Yeah, and the critics and audience agreed with you because the budget was $50 million, which in
half of that money was on Rolling Stone songs.
Yeah. It made $50.1 million.
Wow.
Finished third when it opened. So did not make money.
Did you see the movies that beat it its opening week?
I did, but I can't
remember. One of them was
were.
Hollow Man. That's
Hollow Man. That's right. The Kevin Bacon
Invisible Man remake thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was in like its third week. It was like
yeah.
third week of Hollow Man, and they couldn't beat it.
Wow. Well, the numbers bear out that people just weren't interested in this, and 40% on Rotten Tomatoes critics, 66% audience, 3.2 on Letterboxd. So, I think if we would have done this for Rewatch and Reconsider, we might have reconsidered and realized it's not great. Although I had fun with it. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and
I liked watching it.
I turned my brain
I
off.
liked watching it, but I also really liked learning more about the strike. I think that as I said, watching that documentary was really eye-opening to me. Like, I kind of love the true stories of this whole replacements thing. So I'm glad it led me to that.
Has there been a strike since then?
No, I don't want to get all nerdy about it. You guys can all look it up. There's a lot of people that talk about the fact that the '87 strike was kind of the birth of the modern NFL because there hasn't been a single labor strike since then. But that's kind of because the '87 strike completely crushed the union. That because they're replacing players and everything else, they really kind of put it in its place. And many of the things they were fighting for in '87, they still don't have. And it's just kind of become an owner's league, and players do get money. I mean, don't get me wrong, they get paid. But again, the NFL is a $1 billion business. So there's a ton of money, and players are getting paid well, but at the same time, they still have the barely guaranteed contracts. They still barely have health care after they leave. The concussion thing's a whole other story you could talk about, which, the owners fought for a while. So we won't get into all that. But needless to say, the reason you haven't seen any work stoppages since then is because the '87 strike, the owners did a very effective job of putting the union in its place.
It's interesting. I was thinking about it, like, it seems to me that it's all money in this film, and that's just not a concern as much anymore. I mean, players get so much money now that the idea of $8 million is like nothing. I was thinking about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, $700 million.
Well, here's something though. Talk about money. You know how much money like the commissioner of the NFL is supposed to make this year? Goodell. I think he's getting paid $200 million. I think that's his salary for this year.
Wow.
So just put that in perspective, how much money there is in the league. The commissioner is making.
It's a big part of why I don't like football. I mean, it's like the barbarism of it. It never appealed to me, but it's also what I know is like this corporate greed and really overlooking health for the sake of capitalism, like everything else. And they seem to be a bigger offender than other sports.
A side note, something I didn't mention, which I wanted to mention. So when the movie starts, Shane Falco says that he got 3 concussions, earlier in his career. This dude takes 1,000 of the most hellacious hits throughout this movie. He should be in concussion protocol the majority of this movie. I'm not even sure how he survives. It is ridiculous how hard he gets hit by his own team, by everything else. I'm not sure he survives this movie in real life, but I just thought about that. I'd throw that out there.
What if barnacle scraping isn't even his job, but he has so much head trauma that's what he thinks his job is. He just goes and does it.
That's a good start.
Yeah, that's really, it's so brutal. I mean, God, football is just so brutal.
Or maybe Memento is the sequel to The Replacements, where I just got hit in the head so many times. He has no memory of it.
Oh man, that now my mind is spinning because that's a great story. All right, well, watch this. I say watch it if you can. It's on Peacock. Yeah, if you have Peacock,
I told you, just watch all the scenes with Gene Hackman and Jack Warner at a minimum. Watch it for that.
Yeah. Well, that's it for The Replacements. Next week, it's Rewatch and Reconsider, and we're going to talk about something that maybe deserves a second look. It's your turn to pick, and you picked Wildcats from 1988, also a football film directed by Michael Ritchie.
Keep the football theme. You stay with it.
Good. I haven't seen that since 1986.
Me neither. I haven't seen it since the 80s, definitely. So this is going to be fun. Let's see how well Wildcats aged.
I'm going to guess not very well.
Probably not.
But we'll see. So check that out and come back and talk to us about that. Let's move on to what we watched this week.
Yeah, so I'm full of stories this week. So here's the story. Went to the U.S. Open this past weekend, which is cool. It's a really cool thing to do, but it's kind of exhausting when it's just a long day. And went with the family. They came home when I was going to watch a movie, and I just couldn't find anything. Like, I was just tired and didn't want to think at all. So I was trying to find a movie that I could watch.
You throw in King Richard?
Yeah. It required me to think all that much. And so I stumbled on something I had on my watch list for a little while, which was a movie called The Broken Hearts Gallery from 2020. One of the reasons I was interested in it is that it stars Geraldine, I always have a hard time pronouncing her last name, Viswanathan, who is someone I really like. I think she's a wonderful actress. I really enjoy her screen presence. I think she's pretty wonderful. So romantic comedy with her, I figure what the hell, I'll watch it. It's got a hell of a cast. So on top of her, like the three main characters are her, Philippa Sue, who is obviously in Hamilton, and Molly Gordon is one of her friends. So early Molly Gordon, for who she was. Bernadette Peters is in it. Ego Wodum from SNL is in it, and the love interest is played by what's his name, Dacre Montgomery, who is the heavy metal brother in Stranger Things, and sort of recognized him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I have to say it was a pretty enjoyable movie. I think maybe because it came out in 2020 that it's just one of the movies that probably died in the COVID hellscape. I don't think it just kind of came and went, I guess. I don't even know if it got released in the theater. I have no idea. But I'm
looking at the poster and it says only in movie theaters September 11th. So I don't know.
Yeah.
September 11th of 2020 was not a good time to go to the movies.
It does not seem great. So I think obviously all romantic comedies are pretty cliche to a certain point, but this one is pretty fun. An interesting premise about the idea of this girl who keepsakes of old relationships and things, and you find out why. But she decides to start this, like, curate this museum that people bring their kept items of failed relationships, of things they can't let go, like people they can't let go. And that's kind of like the mini premise of it. And there's a romantic comedy built around that. Just a cute premise. Didn't require any thought, which I really loved. Very likable cast, likable people. It's breezy. I thought it was a pretty good watch. It's something worth checking out if you enjoy a good romantic comedy, which we have established that I do.
Yeah. Where did you watch it?
It's on Hulu.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah. I also went to go see Jaws in the theater because they re-released it. And again, speaking about how terrible movies are doing, the fact that the Jaws re-release was the second highest grossing movie of last week says a lot about what's going on in theaters right now.
Makes me kind of happy.
Yeah,
though.
but we took the family because the kids hadn't really seen it and thought it would be cool to see on the big screen, so we went to go see it. I have to say, after seeing it a bunch of times and seeing it in the theater, it drags a little bit now. Once they get on the boat, that sequence, that's a bit long now.
Yeah.
But maybe just because I've seen it multiple times. But it definitely felt a little longer now than it used to. But still well worth seeing in the theater. I thought it was fun.
How was the restoration? Because they restored it.
Yeah, it was good. I thought it was a good restoration.
Good.
So really cleaned up for the big screen. It was good.
Is it a different cut? I asked that because I have a friend who went to see it, and he says he heard lines in it that he doesn't remember, and he's seen it like 100 times.
I haven't seen it that many times, so I can't say for sure. So I'm the wrong person to ask. This was maybe the 5th time that I've seen it, and I don't remember all the little things about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's still in theaters. I'd like to go see it.
Yeah.
But there's so much to go see.
Well, speaking of that, though, before Jaws started, there were trailers, and all the trailers were for other re-release movies that are coming out. This is a huge thing now. I mean, they are really, everyone's becoming that kind of theater now, where they're just putting out old movies. It's Apollo 13, Back to the Future. So we're going to start seeing a lot more of this.
I'm here for it. I love it. I mean, I saw that they did I can't remember, do the math, but 20 years, I guess, the 20-year anniversary of the 40-Year-Old Virgin, and they did Trainwreck. So a couple Apatow films, and I love it. And they're showing Sunset Boulevard at my local AMC, which is amazing.
Yeah. Look, if this is what brings people to theater, and I'm fine with certain movies getting put back on the big screen. I think they're worth seeing on the big screen. So, I'm fine with it. Of course, we get into the conversation
I'm
about
really
older
excited.
movies cannibalizing new movies. But again, if people aren't going to see the new movies, I don't know what to say. If Apollo 13 will get them in the theater, so be it.
I'm curious to see what Hamilton's going to do now that they're re-releasing it, because it's on Disney, right? Like, does anybody need to see that on a big
That's
screen?
actually how I
don't know.
felt. We've watched it multiple times on Disney. So I'm not really sure what
Yeah.
I'd get out of seeing it on the big screen.
Hey, I'm here for the re-releases. I think, I saw one this week anyway, so I'll talk about that. But it's great, you don't always get a chance to see these things on a big screen if it's something old, and that's a real treat.
Yeah.
I mean, living close to New York, we have the opportunity to do that a lot more. I just saw that they screened Sorcerer at the Paris Theater, which I didn't know until the day before, and I was bummed.
Yeah.
So I would have gone to see it. But yeah, stuff like that's happening all the time, and I'm glad to see it's hitting multiplexes so that people who aren't around New York get the opportunity to see some of these things too. That's really great. Did you see anything else that you want to mention?
I did see Caught Stealing, and
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say, yeah, because we had just done After Hours, it was kind of interesting. Someone said something offhand. I don't remember where it was. It's like After Hours with more bodies. And I thought that was a really good description of it in a lot of ways, because it's kind of parallel to that movie in some ways.
It's so funny because there's you get into it a few minutes in, but actually maybe it's just the beginning, and there's a crane shot that comes down into the street, and I was like, gosh, this kind of reminds me of After Hours. And then they go into the bar, and who's there but Griffin Dunn?
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yeah. And then it was okay.
It was an okay
Did you like
movie.
it?
It wasn't something I particularly loved, but it was fine. I don't think it aspires to be anything more than a genre movie, which is exactly what it is.
Didn't it feel very Guy Ritchie though, like 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but
still fun.
Yeah.
I thought great cat performance. That's always a plus for me.
Great cat performance.
Yeah. All right, what did I see? Well, speaking of revivals, I went to Philadelphia to celebrate my birthday. And as with last year, the podcast 70mm hosted a screening of something. Last year it was Psycho, and this year it was The Thing, the John Carpenter film from 1982, at the Philadelphia Movie Society, which is just an incredible organization. I'm sure I said this last year on the show, but speaking of revival films, I mean, they have just amazing programming of sort of off the beaten path stuff. They have 3 theaters. So in addition to like current titles, you can see like they have a whole year of like David Lynch influence films, which is amazing. And it's like art house meets multiplex, and it's really, really cool. Great to see The Thing on a big screen because I had never done that. People laugh a lot, I think, because of the special effects. Also, incredibly comedic in 2025 is Wilford Brimley. For some reason, everything he does is hilarious. And the fact that he looks like Wilford Brimley from the Quaker Oats commercials in like 1983 or whatever is pretty great.
Brimley
One of those guys.
Brimley's like the Angela Lansbury of male actors, where he never looked young ever.
Yeah. Yep. It's amazing. But that film really holds up. Coming off of doing An American Werewolf in London, I was, thinking about the special effects, and they're very comparable in this. Maybe a little less Rick Baker, but they really do a great job with what they had in the early 80s, and it was a lot of fun. It holds up well. It has that kind of John Carpenter like DIY aesthetic to it that I think Halloween had. Like, that like 4 guys made this movie with no budget and were just like thrown somewhere and put it together. So I really, really love that. What else did I see? I went to see The Conjuring Last Rites yesterday.
You can definitely talk about that one without me, because the odds are I will
Yeah.
not be going to see that movie. So go ahead.
Yeah. It was okay. I mean, it was supposedly the last thing in the whole Conjuring universe, and
it's going to make 65 million this week. I would bet there's no chance this is the last Conjuring movie in the series.
I agree. And in fact, it does that thing where it hands it off to the next generation. So Ed and Lorraine Warren played by my friend and neighbor, well, just neighbor, Patrick Wilson, and Vera Farmiga, have a child, which I don't remember seeing in any of the other Conjuring films, but they go back to when she was born. She kind of gets the gift that Lorraine Warren has and helps them to solve their last case. And Ed Warren has a heart condition, so he's kind of like at the end of dealing with this stuff because your heart rate's going to get up when you're busting ghosts. And so they pass it off to the daughter. But I went to see it because I want to support local. And since Patrick Wilson lives here, I thought it would be fun to, bring it up if I saw him in the grocery store again or something.
Sure.
And we'll see if that happens. But it was fun. I mean, I liked, it's always good to see a horror movie on a big screen. As I mentioned with The Thing, people really got into it. I won't get into the theater experience that I had because it wasn't great, but people around me still really seem to enjoy it. And it's a great way to see a horror film. Also, went to see The Roses, the new Jay Roach film. That's a remake of War of the Roses. Didn't love it. I mean, it was fine, but from what I remember of the original, it was pretty much the same thing, and just kind of wealthy people fighting and like sort of not supporting one another. It seems comical how much these people hate one another. It's even obvious to everybody they encounter, and yet they stay together until they decide to divorce. And it's a little preposterous, but beautiful house in it, great architecture, great food shots.
I mean, great cast. So yeah, I think that's
really great cast.
But yeah, I haven't heard great things about it either right now.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to see that in the theater. I mean, you should see everything in the theater, but if you're going to watch it and you don't feel like going to the theater, still maybe check it out at home. All right. Well, that's all I watched this week. And that's it for another episode. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Rate and review us. We love that. It really helps. And be sure to come back next week when we talk about 1986's Wildcats. We'll see you then. So long. As always, thanks for listening to the weekly movie Throwdown. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for even more from us, visit moviethrowdownpod.com or connect with us on social media. We're Movie Throwdown on Letterboxd and at Movie Throwdown Pod everywhere else.